Hello everybody, Crow here on Vilebranch, only found on titansleague.org. And I'm here today with a special episode on rogues, talents, abilities, strategies. Upon logging in, we have the passive Brutality, which will break down how attack power is applied. Every class on Vilebranch has, if they use attack power, they have a passive that has the breakdown of the stats that affect it. There are 3 total stats that will improve your attack power of varying degrees. Your primary stat will increase it by 3/3, 2/3, and 1/3 is how the breakdown is. And so your strength gives you some attack power, but it's mostly your agility, and a little bit of your stamina will give you attack power as well. And so you get a total of 134 here, as opposed to just getting 2 attack power per strength and 1 attack power for agility. As you can see here, the passive says, rogues are masters of cunning and finesse, combining their unmatched agility and deadly strength with their unrelenting stamina to strike their targets with swift, decisive blows, and slip away into the shadows before their enemies even know what hit them. And so, builds that utilize building a bunch of strength or stamina is just as valuable as agility. Let's break down the base abilities. The rogue on Vilebranch has about everything you would expect a level 18 rogue to have at level 19, except there's a few added spells, one of them being Cheap Shot. Cheap Shot will stun the target for 4 seconds and grant you 2 combo points in exchange for 60 energy. And this is pretty strong. However, you also have Kidney Shot, which is pretty strong too. In finishing move that stuns the target, lasts longer per combo point, will give you about a second per combo point. You also have both Garrote and Rupture. I believe Rupture is a level 20 ability. It adds a second bleed to your rotation though. Slice and Dice, as you know, increases your attack speed by 20%. Ambush does ambush things. You know, a bunch of damage with your daggers. Same thing with Backstab, which is found here in combat. Eviscerate, just a bunch of damage. Expose Armor is a little different here in Vilebranch. It will actually decrease by a specific armor value, because on Vilebranch, your abilities that reduce armor do not reduce it by a percentage anymore, but will instead reduce it by a specific amount. This is in Overhaul, inspired a little bit by Epoch WoW, I believe, because looking back on it, the way armor penetration used to work was really, really cool. It would tell you the exact amount, and you can kind of figure out what 80 armor or 240 armor means. Tooltips that just say 20% of your total armor could vary wildly between clothies and plate wearers, and it just didn't make sense. You have no idea what you're getting, especially if you build armor penetration rating, and that's this whole other ball of wax. Instead, you will still have a percentage of armor penetration on some things, like the rating, the stat, but your talents and your abilities will have a flat amount. And so if you build an armor penetration build with a combination of both of those offensive stats, you can kind of create a more diverse armor penetration build. I will, however, point out that gear with armor penetration has very little to no stamina on it at all, so you're going to be going purely glass cannon at that point. But some people might want to do that to punch through tanks. So we'll see about that. On to combat. Combat is mostly unaffected. Flourish was added. This is a new ability. For 20 energy, it's a finishing move that increases your chance to parry an attack by 10% and lasts longer per combo point. This ability helps give you some defensive utility, as well as the fact that parry haste is still a thing. So when you parry an attack, you will basically smack back with your main hand weapon. It resets the cooldown of your auto attack. You also have Gouge and Kick still, Sprint, Evasion, Sinister Strike, Backstab, all that stuff's unchanged. Subtlety has Vanish now, as baseline. And also give you 25% additional movement speed, helping you move a little faster. This will help you get out of the way of certain things that happen during raids or dungeons, or just get you out of combat. talent trees. Let's get into that now. Improved Eviscerate increases your Eviscerate's damage. Remorseless Attacks will give you a chance to critically strike by 20 or 40% with a lot of your combo point generating attacks after you kill an opponent that yields experience or honor. Malice is, I believe, 135%. When you max out, you get 5% crit for 3 talent points. You also have Fleet-footed here in the second row, which will increase your movement speed by 15% and decrease the duration of movement and parrying effects, making it really good. You also have Ruthlessness, which will give your melee finishing moves up to a 100% chance to add an additional combo point to your target. Puncturing Wounds will increase the critical strike chance of your backstab by 10% per rank and mutilate by 5%, unchanged. Blood Spatter is mostly unchanged. It'll increase your bleed damage from Rupture and Garrote by up to 30%, but now also increases the damage from Hemorrhage by up to 10%. Vigor. This increases your energy regeneration rate by 25%. This is instead of just giving you a flat 20 energy to play with on the top end of your energy bar. This will give you a rapid energy regeneration rate. This is really useful for getting energy back in a way that's meaningful, I have found. Culling. This is a new talent that allows your auto attacks to have a chance to leave the target exposed, giving you a stack of Culling. Culling allows you to use Garrote without being in stealth for 12 seconds. This is great because when you build Assassination, one of your primary things that you like to build is bleeds. And being able to occasionally reapply your Garrote means that you're applying more bleed damage. And it fits really good into this class fantasy of bleeding the enemy out and making sure your poisons really murder them, basically. Lethality increases the critical strike damage bonus of combo point generating abilities that do not require stealth by up to 30%. This is unchanged as well, and is really good for that really hard critical strike damage burst that is expected from Assassination. Venomous Wounds is a new one. When you critically strike with your backstab ability, you plunge deep inside the victim, injecting a poison from your blades into the target. This will cause them to suffer nature damage over time over 12 seconds, stacking twice. This nature damage will scale with your attack power. So if you increase your attack power, the amount of damage that you deal with this weapon poison will increase. I think it also increases with rank. Let me check. Alright. Yeah, it does. Okay. It's a small amount of damage that increases a bunch with each rank. At rank 3, it looks like it's dealing 90 damage. That's probably going to need a little bit of a nerf, but it's there to kind of add that deep wounds effect feel, or this ignite feel, where if you critically strike, you're rewarded with a little extra damage on top. Also, the flavor is in the taste of the poison, so it kind of works with the Assassination build, especially with having access to Mutilate, which will increase the amount of damage dealt to poison targets and give you 2 combo points. And so, you really want to, instead of just spamming Mutilate and hoping your auto attacks apply your poisons, you actually have to use Backstab now to apply your poisons. And then when you do, you get a bonus damage from Mutilate, which is really cool. Now there's synergy between the talents, or the abilities with the talents. You also have Wet Work. Your Rupture and Garrote ticks have a 100% chance to give you 5 energy. It's 50% chance per rank. So by dropping 2 points into this, you can get a bunch of energy from having your bleeds consistently ticking. This has a lot of synergy with Culling. Cold Blood. When activated, this increases the critical strike chance of your next offensive ability by 100%, guaranteeing you that crit. And because of your Venomous Wounds, you might actually want to use it with Backstab now, instead of just using it with Mutilate or Eviscerate. Improved Kidney Shot. This will increase damage the target receives while affected by Kidney Shot by a percentage, really adding into that whole picking on the disabled target fantasy that Assassination really clings to. You also have Cheap Tricks, which will increase the duration of Cheap Shot and Kidney Shot by up to a full second, and decreases the cooldown of your Kidney Shot by 15 seconds. Now, this is really good because when I add abilities that have hard CC, especially to Rogue and Mage specifically, the amount of CC I add is either reduced in the form of duration, or I'll keep that intact to fulfill the class fantasy, but increase the cooldown drastically. And so, without this talent, you have a 40-second cooldown on your kidney shot instead of 25 seconds, which is normal. So, dropping it by nearly half for 2 talent points is pretty good, but it requires that talent point investment to make it good. And if you're putting points into this to make this good, you might not necessarily be putting points into things that increase your damage. So there's this opportunity cost associated with CC. If you build for crowd control, then you have to take away from other things. Seal Fate is mostly unchanged. When you generate combo points, you can get an additional one. Assassin's Resolve is different though. While having a dagger equipped, you receive plus 10 increased maximum energy, and all offensive damage is flatly increased by 5%. This is per rank, increasing by 20 total, with 10% additional offensive damage right on the top. So now your assassin has a crap ton of energy and a bunch of offensive burst. You can also put a point here into Hunger for Blood. This will insanguinate your enemy, consuming a Rupture or Garrote effect on the target to deal 100% of all of his bleed damage immediately as upfront. This can also critically strike, which would effectively double the amount of damage your bleed deals. This has a 30-second cooldown and costs 30 energy. I may nerf this in the future, but the way Hunger for Blood existed in Alpha Wrath of the Lich King, what it did was it required you to have a bleed effect on the enemy. And in exchange for that, it would, I believe, increase the amount of damage that you deal by a whole bunch for a very short period of time. There was always this synergy. I think it actually consumed the bleed effect, and I think healed you for a little bit as well. So what I was really looking for here to use as a capstone at the end of Assassination was a way to make Hunger for Blood actually useful and kind of fit the fantasy more. And so having it kind of first of all be a burst spell makes sense in the theme of the class, but also synergizing with the bleeds as it should have in the first place. It's not just, oh, flat extra damage because bleed. That didn't really sit right with me. And so right now I can come up here and just garrote, and I'm going to pop this real quick. So the target needs to be in front of me. That was a bizarre interaction. There we go. Okay, Garrote is on the target. I'm getting energy back. Boom. 258 damage right off the top. It's pretty insane, actually. It's probably a lot better with Rupture, it looks like. Let's build up some combat points, shall we? Okay, just about. So you get a bunch of energy here, Rupture, and then boom, a bunch of damage from that Rupture. I probably will be nerfing this damage because it is a crap ton, and because it's bleed damage, it bypasses armor. So I'm absolutely going to nerf that by a bunch. But it's pretty cool to have all that damage up front when you really want to pull out that burst out of left field. Let's go ahead and take a look at combat now. Combat's pretty interesting. You have improved gouge, which hasn't really been changed. This will increase the effectiveness of your gouge by up to a second and a half. Really useful stuff for crowd control. Improved Sinister Strike will reduce the energy cost of Sinister Strike. Dual Wield Specialization increases the damage done with your offhand by up to 50%. Precision increases the chance for you to hit. Deflection increases your parry chance by up to 6%. Blade Dancing doesn't just increase the duration of your slice and dice, but also increases the parry chance granted by your flourish by up to 10 seconds. This gives you a short window in which you can have a bunch of parry chance to really activate Riposte. But also, if you're in melee combat with an enemy, that parry haste is very handy. Endurance here will increase the armor value from the items that you have on by up to 50%, and decreases your sprint and evasion defensive cooldowns by up to a minute, making them far more useful for you to get away and survive. And so with starter gear, and putting 2 points into here for 50% more armor, I now have 710 armor, giving me 26% reduced damage, as opposed to 500, which is 20. You wind up with like 6% more mitigation for physical damage. I'd argue that's pretty good. Although it might not be as impactful as precision, for offensive reasons anyway. You also have improved kick. Kick, like the other CC spells, had its energy cost increased, and so by taking improved kick, you can bring it back down to normal. 25. I think that's what it was. Pushing us down to 5. It's pretty easy, pretty good. Gives you a chance to silence. That's really good. Off to improved sprint. Increases the duration of your sprint and allows it to break CC when it comes to movement effects, so like snares and roots. You can just kind of run away after somebody blows a big cooldown like Frost Nova. Down here you have your weapon specializations. You have close quarters combat, mace specialization, hack and slash. These have not really changed. However, there's a new talent called Bandit's Guile. This will reduce the energy cost of your feint by 100% and gives you a 100% chance to cause the next melee or ranged ability attack to miss you for the next 4 seconds. And so if you're in combat and use feint, you get 100% chance to be missed by melee and range attacks. So what this does effectively for PvP would add this into your rotation, and in PvE it's really good if you're being hit by an enemy. And if you hit feint and it doesn't break threat off of you, then the next attack that's coming in is probably going to miss you and keep you alive longer. I feel that this was a really good way to utilize a cooldown that a lot of people don't really use as well. That fits really into the core fantasy of the combat rogue, being up close and personal and very adept with their weapons. You have an Adrenaline Rush down here to increase both your attack speed and energy regeneration rate for a short period of time. This is the Blade Flurry Adrenaline Rush combination spell with a 2-minute cooldown. It's great burst when you want a window of increased DPS. Aggression increases the damage dealt by Backstab, Eviscerate, and Sinister Strike by a flat 15%. Pretty brainless here, just a damage increase for those abilities. Blade Twisting is really useful. It increases the damage dealt by Sinister Strike and Backstab, but also allows your damaging melee attacks to have a 10% chance to daze the target for 8 seconds. This is pretty useful for preventing enemies from getting away, or preventing humanoids from running away for help. I feel this is also part of the core fantasy. Combat Potency gives your successful offhand melee attacks up to a 20% chance to generate 20 energy. Really heavily leans into this offhand weapon spec, where you're constantly slapping them for extra energy. Helps you generate energy too, which is part of the combat core fantasy, I think. There's also lightning reflexes to increase your dodge and melee haste. Pretty good, pretty good. And finally, Ambidextrous Strike. This is kind of meh because it's not as really impactful as everything else or some of the major cooldowns, but I found this to be quite useful. You see, on top of having a main hand weapon strike, you now have an offhand weapon strike. Ambidextrous Strike will swing for the offhand weapon, causing 10 damage in addition to 106% of your normal weapon damage. It will also reward you with 2 combo points instead of 1, making this something you probably want to use every time it's off cooldown. So now you have a spec where you're controlling with what hand you're actually slapping people with. I need to move this into the actual tree. But the fantasy here is to be like boom, boom, you're smacking, and all of a sudden you got your points back, all 5 points, with your energy almost all the way back up really quickly. You can pop your slice and dice for a whole bunch, and then keep smacking. And look at all that energy coming back. All that damage going out. It's perfect. I feel like it captures the fantasy pretty decently. In the original version, Ambidextrous Strike also had a 100% hit chance, making it impossible to miss. I may or may not add that back. I'm not sure. You guys tell me what you think about that. Subtlety. This is basic famous. I think it's really strong right now, and so I'll probably be nerfing some of the damage off the top here. But for the most part, Subtlety is that core stealth-based rogue spec, whereas Assassination is about coming out of stealth with a burst and then leaving the target fucked up, or Combat, going toe-to-toe, using your advanced agility to kind of dance around the battlefield. Subtlety is all about you coming from stealth, hitting the enemy so hard they have no idea what happened, and disappearing again before they even can counterattack. It's about being so oppressive that your opponents do not have the opportunity to come back at you. And so, I think these talents kind of reflect that perfectly. First of all, you have Relentless Strikes, which means every time you use a finishing move, you have up to 100% chance for 5 points, give you 25 energy. This is really good in combination with Vigor, or if you're playing in the combat tree, your combat potency and your adrenaline rush. Yeah, anything that increases your energy regeneration is always going to be great for a rogue, but it's really crucial in general for things that cost you a lot of energy. And things like Ambush will cost you a lot of energy. Master Deception is really useful and also really thematic here. It reduces the chance that enemies have to detect you while in stealth. Opportunity increases the damage from behind by up to 20%. And by behind, I mean Backstab, Mutilate, Garrote, and Ambush, spells that you would normally be behind your target to cast. Although with Mutilate after Burning Crusade, that's no longer a thing. Sleight of Hand reduces the chance you are critically hit by melee and range attacks by up to 4%, and increases the threat reduction of your feint by an additional 50%. This is pretty good to add effectiveness to your feint, but also in general, reducing the chance that you could be hit by melee and range attacks can save the day if you're up against a hunter or someone hitting you, and you have that last little sliver of health. It could make or break. Dirty Deeds. This reduces the energy cost of Cheap Shot and Garrote by up to 30. As you may have noticed, one of the biggest opportunity costs here with Cheap Shot was that it's 60 energy. If you put 2 points into here, it goes down to 30, making it a little more useful. Ambush, your bread and butter. This will increase the critical strike chance of your ambush ability by up to 50%, and drastically increasing the burst that you'll have right out of stealth. You just walk up and boom, bunch of damage, that's what's up. Dick's out on the coffee table. Camouflage increases your speed while stealth by up to 25% and reduces the cooldown by up to probably 10 seconds, if I have to guess. Let's check it. Yeah, 25% and 10 seconds. As you can see with stealth here, it reduces it down to a 0% nerf to your movement speed. Actually, I think that's baseline, isn't it? Oh, no. Yeah, no. That goes down to 0. So instead of being slower in stealth, you unironically wind up a little faster. Yeah, I think this is actually 25% over. Anyway, Heightened Senses increases your stealth detection and further reduces the chance that you're hit by ranged attacks by 6% and spells. So, in combination with sleight of hand, you can unironically reduce the chance you're hit by ranged attacks by almost 10%. It's really strong. You also have Hemorrhage, which is unchanged. Costs 35 energy now, though. Dirty Tricks. It increases the range of your gouge and sap. Not just sap, but gouge too. By 5 yards. And reduces the energy cost of it by 50%, making your gouge even more potent for combat spec. At only 22 energy, that's a no-brainer. That's a great ability. Serrated Blades is returned to its classic amount of 32 per rank, and increases the damage dealt with your Rupture ability by up to 30%. One of the big things, the identities of Subtlety, is unlike Assassination when it comes to bleeds, the idea behind it is to come out of stealth, hit you really hard, and leave like a Rupture, and then leave combat entirely. And so having extra damage during Rupture here is actually entirely in theme. Although I would technically argue Garrote is too. Bleeds in general are kind of shared between Assassination and Subtlety. It's pretty weird how there's this overlap there, but it makes sense for your stealth-based builds. Honor Among Thieves. This will allow you to generate combo points whenever anybody critically strikes in your group. This is great for raids and I guess in general, when anyone's really critically striking a whole bunch. It allows you to build up combo points without having to do anything. So that means you can sit in stealth a little longer in battlegrounds, or come out in raids swinging with your heavy hitting attacks immediately, and allow you to rush to those finishing moves for that burst. Shadow Step is unchanged. You just Shadow Step to the target and deal a crap ton of damage. Initiative gives you up to 100% chance to add additional combo points to your target when you use Ambush, Garrote, or Cheap Shot. Cheap Shot will wind up giving you 3 combo points this way. Ambush and Garrote give you 2. I believe. Unless Ambush is also... Nope, yeah, 2. Alright. Elusiveness. Reduces the cooldown of Vanish and Evasion by up to a minute, and your Cloak of Shadows by 30 seconds. Really, really useful. Especially here, once you pick it up at the bottom of the tree. Slaughter from the Shadows requires you to take Hemorrhage, but what it does is it reduces the energy cost by Backstab and Ambush by 20, the energy cost of your Hemorrhage by 5, and increases all your damage done in general by 10%. This is a really strong talent in the tree that emphasizes you using your Backstab and Ambush abilities to build up combo points and spend a lot of damage hitting your enemies from behind. Of course, you have to actually get behind the enemy to do that. And so if that's not possible, this talent's useless. But otherwise, the damage increase is just great. Shadow Dance. This allows you to enter Shadow Dance for 6 seconds, allowing you to use Sap, Garrote, Ambush, Cheap Shot, Premeditation, Pickpocket, and Disarm Trap, regardless of being stealthed. So what this is a great way of expending your energy in a big burst, sending out ambushes or cheap shots or garrotes, depending on what the need arises for. If you need that stun to get off, cheap shot's great. To interfere at casting as well. Garrote's really, really good. If you can catch it and leave combat somehow, I suppose Sap could be, but I've never seen a use for sapping with Shadow Dance. Garrote. Garrote's really good in general because it's a bleed. It stays even if you don't stay. There's already synergy with that talent. And of course Ambush, obviously. Now down here, a requirement for it is Cloak and Dagger. This is a custom talent that increases the critical strike chance of your Hemorrhage by 20%, and your Hemorrhage critical strikes will now allow you to reduce the cooldown of your Shadow Dance by 2 seconds, meaning the cooldown of your burst window goes down the more that you use Hemorrhage, especially when you crit. You have to crit with it to trigger the ability, and now your crit chance is increased by 20 for hemorrhage. Impunity is a fun one. You have a chance equal to your dodge chance of taking less damage from a direct damage spell or ranged attack, further frustrating clothies and hunters respectively. Anybody shooting at you from a range is going to absolutely hate you. Especially, I believe, hunters, if you have a 10% chance less to be hit. So impunity, boom, 50% less damage every time you quote-unquote dodge a spell or range attack. Finally, you have Cloak of Shadows. You know what this does. It removes all harmful spell effects and increases your chance to resist all spells by 90% for 5 seconds. You can also... it also does not remove effects that prevent you from using Cloak of Shadows, though. But this is usable while in stealth as well. Just a reminder, guys. I'm sure most of you already knew that, but I'm just pointing it out now. So, in summation, your subtlety tree will make it more efficient to use things from stealth, allow you to supply a bunch of burst, and then disappear into the shadows. Or, if you could kind of push your enemy off balance a little bit, especially with Garrote, not just from re-stealthing over and over again, but repositioning behind the target in order to get off backstabs, especially after you use Hemorrhage. Because Hemorrhage will help you get to those ambushes quicker while in combat without having the re-stealth. And so use stealth, come out, swinging, maybe gouge somebody and run off, try to re-stealth again. If that doesn't work, you could vanish, open again. Maybe if you could re-stealth, open again. And then when you can't open any longer, you can shadow step behind them, smack them a whole bunch, hemorrhage a whole bunch, try to get those, maybe shadow dance, and then start hemorrhaging a bunch. It's just this massive amount of increasing the burst window to maybe not permanently, but it feels permanent. So, that was all the talents, and I believe that was a lot of the discussion for strategy. If you like what you saw, like and subscribe to the video. If you don't like what you saw, let me know in the comments down below, or go to my Discord, links in the description. It would be fantastic if you guys have better ideas on how to change, add to, subtract from, or just tell me if you see what you like what you see. I love the idea of the Rogue. It was my first major class I dedicated myself to, and I really feel like I got the class fantasy right on this one. I am a little iffy on subtlety because some of this stuff seems a little ham-fisted, but I also feel like if I nerf the numbers a little bit, it'll still be playable, and it'll still capture the fun. So I'll be undergoing some changes with that, but for the most part, if anything, all this stuff's going to stick around. The numbers might be tweaked. Maybe they'll move from different places, but I don't think these talents are going to go anywhere thematically. I like the idea of the fantasy. Your assassin comes out and tries to burst you down with heavy crits and a little bit of crowd control. Your combat rogue rushes in and avoids attacks and tries to big smacks for some crazy amounts of in-your-face damage. Subtlety rogue comes out of the shadows, wombo combos somebody and leaves. That was the idea behind it all. I like the alternative attack power contributions. This was heavily inspired by Wall over on Wallcraft. If you guys have not seen that server, go check it out. Wallcraft's link is in my Discord. It's a 1.1.2 vanilla private server with some heavy modifications. Honestly, I think personally it's the better version of Turtle WoW, but you guys can leave that up to you. Wall's a great guy too. You'll never get let down with that dude. Wonderful dude. Go check it out. Well, I think that's the end of the video. Thanks everybody for watching. See ya, everybody. See ya, see ya. See ya, see ya, see ya. Goodbye. Bye. See ya.